as a Black woman, especially when back then, you feel like I just have to be seen as competent. And so there's so much nerves about how you're presenting yourself. When now I've come to the point, I am more confident, but it's also like, they don't care how I'm presenting myself. Like, he wants to know, where are the trucks going to be parked? Like, where can I put a light? Like, where can I hide the gack? And I wish, going back, that even when I was shadowing, I just asked questions like, what do they need out of the location scout? Because I would hear the director talk about like what the scene was and blah, blah, blah. And so that's just what I did. Like, I would be like, we're doing this. I'm going to have her walk through here. I'd love for this light to come on. But I didn't ever ask to know, what does the crew need out of this tech scout? Like, because I'm telling this grand vision I have, when they might just be wondering like, how, where can I hide trucks?
Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon is a podcast on directing for anybody that's quite simply ever watched anything. Pete converses with a wide range of fellow directors, writers, actors, showrunners, producers, executives, and more on a journey to determine just what makes a good director and why we'll always need stories. The Director is Pete Chatmon's digital studio, built on the pillars of craftsmanship that ensure a unique vision. I'm talking about story, innovation, perspective. Learn more about The Director, and better yet, get your official Director's Chair wear by visiting www.drctr.video. That's drctr.video.
All right. Welcome to episode 23 of Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon. I am your host, you guessed it, Pete Chatmon, and this introduction is being recorded on March 30th, 2021. It's my last day on my 2-episode block of You, day 20 of 20. It's interesting. I've done a lot of half-hour blocks of TV where basically you shoot 2 episodes at one time, and it's cross-boarded. So in any given day, from scene to scene, you could be doing a scene from one episode, and then after you knock that scene out, you go to a scene from the other. So you're preparing, in that case, maybe 40 pages of direction at one time. And in this case, it's about 100 pages, as the show was an hour-long drama on Netflix. And so I was looking at my page count last night on day 19 of 20, and I've directed about 94 pages so far. So it feels in a weird way, maybe not so weird, like I've done a feature film, but I'm excited. It's episode 7 and 8 of season 3. And I will obviously let y'all know when that drops so you can get your binge on and catch up with Joe Goldberg and his black hat. But today I am welcoming our guest, Nzingha Stewart, to the show. She is a writer, a director, an executive producer, an all-around storyteller, and amazing person. You may have seen some of her early work in music videos for artists like Jay-Z, 50 Cent, Bilal. Particularly the video that really stood out to me that kind of first made me say, oh, who did this, was the Soul Sister video for Bilal. Black and white, super elegant, sexy, just very poetic. And it was one of those things that really caught your eye upon watching it. So check that out if you haven't. Great song, great video. But since then, she went through the Disney ABC program after doing 2 feature films. And obviously, I'm not going to step on all these stories. She'll tell you better. But she's most recently NAACP nominated for Little Fires Everywhere, for which she did 2 episodes. She's got a new series coming soon, shooting in Italy and New York, called From Scratch, with Reese Witherspoon's company, Hello Sunshine, and starring Zoe Saldana, who I had the pleasure of working with. You probably see her over my head if you're watching this on video from my debut feature, Premium. And she's just got a great sensibility, a great story, great passion for what she does. And I think you'll enjoy what we talked about. So without further ado, episode 23, Nzingha Stewart, Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon.
Roll sound. Speed.
The interview. Take one.
Action. My first question for you is, what scene are you most proud of directing and why?
That is like asking what is my favorite breath I ever took. There is a scene in Scandal. I don't remember which episode it was, but there was a scene in Scandal with like in the White House living room with all of the major players. I think it was 10 people in the scene and it was a 9-page scene. And I felt like, hey, there's just so much coverage you have to get with that many people in 9 pages.
Right.
But I felt like that was a scene that really felt impactful and the tension kept building and the handoffs were beautiful. And it just, I liked how I approached the day. I broke the scene into 3 parts and just rehearsed each part as its own thing instead of 9 pages at a time. I felt like that's kind of rough on the actors. So we'll rehearse up to this point and then stop. And then when we have that, we'll rehearse just this middle point and then stop and then so on. And afterwards, all the actors came up and were like, that was so thoughtful of you because I was so scared I wasn't going to remember it all. And, and by like, once we got out of the masters, they did know the whole thing, but doing it that way just made them feel less pressure. So I felt like my approach to it, I was proud of, and like what we did, what I was proud of. So, there's things I've loved as a whole more, but I felt like I liked the way I handled that.
Right. That's interesting. I wonder, my question to that is, did you have support from the AD? Because sometimes, right, they just like, hey, we got scene 8, 12, 24, and 51 in the White House. Want to block shoot it? You know what I mean? Like, were they on board with that? Or did it, or was it you saying like, this, I think is the best way to get this in the can for everyone's like creative excellence,
I think I'm really very respectful of the ADs and what they have to juggle and the pressure that they're getting from another side. But I also feel like I've grown to the point where I know what's the best way to accomplish it. So if I think block shooting really is it, I'll say, yeah, I don't want to be here all my life either. So, but if I think that that's not, like, the scene is emotionally too weighty to then move into the next thing and jump back, or then I'll say, no, I do not want to do that. And, I know it's time-wise maybe not the best, but in the end of the day, it is, because then the actors don't need so many takes, and you get a beautiful scene. I think we have learned so much, like, oh, they won't call you back if you don't make your day. And that can be true. You do have to make your day, but they definitely won't call you back if they don't like your work. And so making something that's good trumps the most efficient way to do it. And that should kind of guide you. But then making something that's good often means if you do block shoot something where it's simple to do that and easy to do that, now you have more time for the next scene and you can really ensure that it's good.
Yeah, for everybody listening, these are like every question reveals 10 more questions, right? Like, if you do that, well, am I going to jam myself on another scene? Or like, I can think of one time where it was like the day one, well, I'll be transparent. It was day one on Greenleaf, which was like my first 1 hour. And it was like the opening scene. And it was with Keith David and Lynn Whitfield. So I'm a little bit like, oh, wow, And it was written, he's on the couch. She comes down the stairs. he talks to him, and then it's over, cold open. And he wanted to walk around the room and move around this table and come back into, it was basically, he did like a round robin of the entire set.
Oh no.
and I was
everything.
light everything, pieces here and there. And my thought was, well, all right, I just met you. You really like this idea, and it's better. I can't front. I'm literally going to push everything to have half the time for the rest of the day. Do I want to stand my ground for that when you don't even know me yet? Or do I gain some favor if I do this now and then later on be like, I can't do that again. You know what I mean? And that's the negotiation, right? That you're often faced with.
Yeah. That's also a great way to think, though, is that coming into it with an actor, I always like to give them a win early, because you are building trust and establishing a new relationship with them. If they think right off the bat, this is someone willing to collaborate and work with me, it's easier. Exactly what you said. The next time they want to try that, like, come on now, like, we don't have time to do this. And I had a similar situation once with an actor who was really intransigent about it. But I was like, there was no one around. Like, we were in Canada. There was no writer on set. There was no producing director. And it just was like, this girl wants to walk through 3 sets and have me like, she's like, I was like, but it's written in just this one room.
Right. And looking around for backup.
Yeah, eventually they did have to call one of the producers down, because I was like, there's no way we can make our day if I have to light 3 rooms and cover people moving through 3 rooms. And eventually they were like, well, she really wants it, we have to do it. And I was like, not on me.
Right.
But it was also the kind of thing that you do get to say to yourself, I don't want to go back to that show. Like,
yes,
because, and like, you get to say, that wasn't the same way they can say, we don't want so-and-so to come back. You can say to your team, like, yeah, if they call again, I don't think it's for me. Like, I don't like to work, because it's things like that where, like, a day player would have figured it out. Whatever their impulse was, if you say it's in this room, they would figure it out. That's what you do.
Yeah. And that's the journey, though, as you do more work and you get more confident and comfortable that, like, people are calling, then you get a little more like, I didn't really like the style of shooting on that show, although there are valuable skills that you learn with the most challenging experiences. Well, I love that. One question, and we got to like 9 topics, but tell me, like, I know of you from NYU back in, the day, and we had some mutual friends. I don't know if we met while there, but you were just known as a director to watch out for, a director killing it in music videos. But, like, where'd you grow up, and, like, what led you to the world of music videos?
I was born in Brooklyn and was there till about 9. And then high school was Atlanta, and then moved back to New York for NYU. And got into music videos. While I was at NYU and had access to equipment, I wasn't in Tisch. I was in school for philosophy and Black studies, but you still get the student discounts on film. And I started doing music videos for people who earned money through questionable means, and just
pharmaceuticals,
providing calm for people. And it was definitely, now when people say, oh, you're so calm on set when things are falling apart, it's like, I started out being afraid I would be murdered if I didn't do a good job. So if that's not on the table, everything else, there's nothing to really get that excited about, I guess. So it does give you training and, like, being grounded inside yourself. But I put together my first reel through those pharmaceutically funded music videos. And then I was also writing treatments for other directors.
Okay.
And a couple of the directors that I wrote treatments for forwarded my reel to a rep, and that's what started to really get me work.
Now, what made you want to pick up the camera? Was it you were getting such a foundation in philosophy and obviously you're living the Black experience, but then when you read about it, and like, was it to control the image? Was it to share a perspective that wasn't out there? Like, what drove you to even do that? Because it's a unique, not everybody becomes a director.
Yeah, I was a director before I chose my major. I wanted to go to Tisch initially, and I did my interview for my scholarship with a graduate student in Tisch and just was like, how do you like it? Blah, blah, blah. And she basically said, honestly, you can learn a lot of this stuff PAing and doing your own studies and like just doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, but this is the only time in your life a bunch of people will sit in a room and read the same books as you, and you can talk about it and have discussions and get into it.
Mm-hmm.
So her advice, which was the best advice I've probably ever been given, was get great internships in film, but study what you want to talk about now, because you're not going to have that time ever again. And I was like, I want to talk about philosophy and Pan-Africanism.
Mm.
So switched and went into Gallatin, and then that became my thing. But I was also, even, let me see if I can find it. You won't still see this. There's these pictures my mom gave me one Christmas.
Yeah.
This was my first directing experience when I was 10.
There you
like,
go.
Would just write these plays and make my brothers or my cousins be in these plays. And like, I was costume designer, director, writer, and just didn't even know that was a job. It just was so fun to me to make stuff up and like make my whole family come watch this performance.
Right.
So it was always in me to do that. And it just was like, while I'm studying that, I will take this advice and sink into just other things that are interesting.
Mm-hmm. That's super interesting. It's because I was like tunnel vision with intent to be a director, but I took Metropolitan Studies at NYU just because I was like, I gotta fulfill the credits, and it was about studying communities. And part of what I had to do, like I had to go to one of the Russian neighborhoods and Jamaican neighborhoods and just research and go around and talk to people and get a sense of how that community had evolved. And it kind of ended up, it was super interesting. And then it tethered to my own inclination to tell stories about gentrifying areas and this kind of minor subject that I took fed back into the stories that I wanted to tell and kind of informed me to have a little bit more, authority over the topic. And you can't tell a story if you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Although I guess that's not a requirement, but it's, it would be ideal. So when were music videos like, okay, here's an entryway for me, or was it okay?
I loved music videos, and really, like, when people that I was always up against started getting into features, I'd be like, yes, they're gone. I can get that work. I felt like you could be experimental. You could just create beauty for beauty's sake.
Mm-hmm.
I love musicians. I love being around them, working with them, talking to them. And then I started changing, just getting older, and like, oh, this artist doesn't want to come out of their set because it's raining for 6 hours.
Right.
Stops being fun.
Right.
Or, and just the music industry changed. Like when I got into it, there were like 30 labels. Mm-hmm. And by the time I was done with it, it was like 3 labels. The budgets were slashed. And it was just the nature of LimeWire and Napster, and like people could burn CDs. Like there was no money anymore in the music industry to just ball out with $300,000 videos. Like I don't even know how kids who do that now live. Like they must have a bunch of roommates. Like I don't know how it's possible, but it all started changing at a time when I was starting to mature and wanting to take that further, wanting to take what I learned about basically style and creating a really beautiful image into a narrative format. And it just all, and then I learned what a lot of people learn. It's very difficult to break into television, almost harder than features.
Yeah. Well, I thought long and hard about that because I just like delivered a manuscript. I wrote a book about directing. Look at that. And part of the thing that I noticed was like, oh, wow, I could raise $500,000 for my feature with more and ease, if it has the biggest quotations around it, but with more ease than getting hired to do TV, because one is selling you on me for me, and the other is selling you on me for you.
Yeah.
Right. And so like there's every reason to think that in an industry kind of governed by fear and insecurity, there are so many reasons to just be like, I don't know, or no. And that's what the toughest like hurdle is, because if you don't have the like cosign of folks, or you're not under the right armpit,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's really tough. How did you transition into TV?
I did not have those connections. And so it was, like you said, like I was not under the right armpit, and it was really difficult. I got into the fellowship program based on music videos. And then it was hard to even get to shadow, because I would hear, well, she doesn't have a lot of dialogue. She doesn't shadow a lot of dialogue, which is important. But I felt like, well, these are things that are simple to learn, like coverage and what you need to tell the story in this format. But like style is so hard. Like you don't really learn that. Do you not want that? And they're like, no, thank you.
Right. So, as if you're really directing these actors anyway in the beginning. Like they're
exactly.
like, come on. They're like, I've decided who I am, and you're not going to get me to do anything but do it faster or slower.
Yes. And then I decided to start writing things. I wrote one thing, which we won't talk about. And then I wrote another thing that I did get made on like a Lifetime movie, which then people started to like I would get to shadow, and then people that I shadowed really liked that movie. That movie did really well for them. So they wanted another one in a similar vein. So I wrote and directed another movie. And then just having done those two, I started to get work. Like it was like she can do 2 feature-length things, like, and then you know how it is. Like there's that one point where it's just off to the races, and like now you don't have to think about it. You don't have to worry anymore. It's, you know what I mean?
Was the writing something that you did strategically? Like, was it like, all right, I don't really fancy myself a writer, but let me just get this content out there because nobody's giving me a script. And if I write it for myself, then I can show that I can direct dialogue?
Yes. I mean, there's yes and no. Yes for those 2 projects, for sure. And then, but now that I feel like I can write, I'm not Aaron Sorkin, but I can write. There's ideas that come to me that I love, and then it's more a passion project. Like you were saying, in quarantine, you had to do something with yourself those first few. Right. I wrote a script with a friend who is Lindsay, the script supervisor on Grey's Anatomy.
Very lovely, Lindsay Cohen.
Lovely Lindsay. And we did it as like both of us were going crazy in the house. And like we'd had this idea on set. Like there was some incident on Grey's where we had this like a fumes or something. We all had to stop working for a couple hours till it aired out. And we just started spitballing this idea. And one of the producers was like, that sounds like a real movie, actually. And so, well, we never had time to talk to each other and really get into it until quarantine. Wrote it and love it so much. And literally a week after we sent it into my agent, it sold, which is like very rare that happens. Thank you.
Right. That's dope.
But is the kind of thing that happens when you write just because you love it. Like, just
Right.
like, oh, this will be fun to do.
Right. The other thing too that's great about that though is like there's all these little byproduct skills that we gain that we never know we're gaining. Like my first job out of college was at this place, Baseline Studio Systems, and they were the studios paid for that information before IMDb came out and was like, yo, free. And my job was to make phone calls every day to anything that got mentioned in the trades.
Wow.
So if it was like Tom Cruise was overheard at the Waverly Inn talking about Mission Impossible 12, I got to call Cruise Wagner Productions and be like, yo, is that true? And that job I was, wasn't the biggest fan of it. But when I went to raise money for my film, I had no problem talking to anyone because I'm used to this every day to the tune of about 50 phone calls a day. Wow. And when you write, you gain that skill of like, when you're taking incoming material, because you're doing all kinds of stuff, when you're at the helm with more of a hand in it, you can identify, oh, it might not be the best script now, but the idea is there. And I think there's a perspective that we could take to enhance it.
That's a delicate conversation to have a lot of times with showrunners. The best ones really do want to know. And if you flag something that like doesn't, sometimes it doesn't make logical sense, or it's too hard to shoot. Too hard to shoot is the easiest one for them, because then it doesn't feel like a criticism.
Yeah.
But for example, I just did a show where I felt like the ending would be more fulfilling if there's a beat right before it where the lead character is super happy. And I said, I think if she's happy here, then there's no tension that she's not going to win in this final scene. If we adjust that, then I think you'll really feel the big win at the end. And the showrunner was wonderful and just was like, oh, that's such a good idea. Thank you so much. You're right. Let me make the changes tonight. You have to really feel your way, because sometimes you just know, like, I just can tell that person won't be receptive. And you can, in the nicest way possible, like, just want to throw something out. If you don't love it, it's okay. But you kind of know, but I feel like they're not going to love it. And then you just stop, like, because, it can really turn people against you if you constantly I have this, when they're not the kind of person that loves working that way.
Now, how does that work for you when it's a feature and you get a script and you're like taking a look at things you might want to,
Well, that I think you can go ham on. That I think they want you to. And for two reasons. Like, for one, I think they want to hear what your vision is when you come in the room. And for two, you have to make sure it will be a movie you want to make. And so if stuff isn't right on the page and you don't like it, you should say that to make sure they agree, and you're not in a job where you're like, ooh, I don't like this, But I do come in a lot of time, and I actually like scripts that need a lot of work, but but the core idea and the characters I love, because then I find my way in easier. And it's like, oh, it's like a puzzle. Like, oh, well, the second act, they lose attention here. There's not as much adversity here. This character is here for no reason. They can combine them here, and doing that helps me to become a part of the script. Right.
So how did things change? Because the first film was With This Ring, and then the second was The 10th Date. And I shadowed you back in 2017 on Grey's Anatomy. And I watched both of those films in preparation of shadowing you. And I'll come back and talk about the things I learned while shadowing you. But how did it differ? How did Tall Girl come together? Because that wasn't something that you self-generated, quote unquote. Like, how did that come together, and what was that process like?
That is something that we all know very well, which is recommendations and how the work you did on your last job follows you. And I had done a pilot for Disney, and one of the executives on Tall Girl used to work at Disney and called and asked if there's a, because it's a high school movie, is there any directors that have worked with young people that you've liked lately? And they were like, we love this director we just did a pilot with. They recommended the meeting, and the meeting just went really well. It was the same thing. I came in with my notes, came in with my references, like, this is what it's going to look like. Hopefully they like it because that's the movie I want to make.
Right.
And they did, and it all worked out. And it's something that, like, I can see how much I've grown as a director. And even since, weirdly, I feel like it was after Tall Girl, like going through the trenches, armed with just enough knowledge from all of the episodic work I had accumulated, the 2 features. After that is when it all sank in, not so much in it. And it just all started coming together in a way that I felt like I had an evolutionary leap by the time Little Fires happened. That just was like, I get it now. I get what my role is.
You could harness it, like you could, like, you were in complete command of the director's toolkit.
And also I really got, it's my movie. And I think even on Tall Girl, I didn't really get it. There definitely were things that, like, I fought for, and I had a great experience. I had a really great executive at Netflix who was a friend, like, so I had a good transitional period with somebody like that who's so supportive.
Right.
But I still think there were things that, like, there were certain department heads that the studio was like, well, you haven't done a feature, so we need to hire these people. But I didn't fight hard enough. And there's a way to fight smartly and to just be like, here's why this is important to me. Or I just felt like it was almost like episodic still, like it's their movie, it's their DP, it's their show, it's their, after that, I always do a, like, what did I like about my work? What did I not like about my work? The biggest things I didn't like were the places where I just didn't fully step in and take control, not in a asshole way, just in a, it's my vision. I know what I need to accomplish it. I need these things and I need to do this. Whereas even in Little Fires, being a part of an episodic, the first episode I had, the flashback, was almost like a pilot because different actors, different sets, different time period. But I went into that meeting with, like, references. Here's what I want it to look like. It's different than the look of the rest of the show. Are you okay with that? Here's what I'd like the framing to be the composition to be a little different. They signed off, thankfully. But I started to think, even in episodic, everything is your movie. Like, don't just think like, this is the script I got. I can't do anything to it except direct it.
Right.
You can question things in a supportive way. Your job is to make it the best it can be. And sometimes that means, well, I think that this line is a little too much. So can we cut this? And this doesn't really make sense to me. Can we get rid of this? Like, it's helpful to the showrunner to bring that stuff up.
It sounds like it's dope to hear, because that's the evolution, right? Like, you get in the beginning, you're kind of happy to be there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then you're
I'm direct this the best I can within
their framework. And, like, I'll try, like, a little sprinkle of something, but not enough that it can't be what they normally want it to be. And then you start, like, saying, this is about to be your scene. Like, that's what you're getting, and never out of making your own reel, but because you know how to use a camera and elicit an emotion. When you mentioned the Little Fires meeting, and your episodes were great as always.
Thank you.
It sounds like you had the script before you got hired, and that sounds different from that sounds unique to premium cable or streaming, right? Was that something that you chose to do, being a thorough director, or did you think that was that required of you? Like, how did you come into that meeting with these references for that?
It wasn't required. I think they were surprised when I came with all that stuff. But I mean, they were like, come prepared to talk about your vision for the script. And because this is that first episode, particularly, is a standalone. And I think the best way to have that conversation is with images. And I also, again, really wanted to make sure they liked the ideas and were, you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't going to show up and do something like talk a good game. And then what I do, they were like, this looks nothing like our show. Like, you know, it's like strategically, this doesn't look like your show because they're in such different places. And then at the very end, we'll work it into the show you have now. Like, we'll build to that in the last 5 minutes. And they were wonderful. And I want to go back just because I said that thing about like trying new things and really owning each script. I am conscientious enough to know that if it's too different, like there was an episode for the people that I'd done. It was episode 4 in the first season. So they'd done the pilot, they'd done the second episode. Like, I think they might have had to redo some stuff in the third one, but it was a very new show, but they had already set a look. And so I felt like, you know, the producing director was wonderful. I was like, we wanted you early because you come from music videos. We want to like spice it up. And so I was like, are you sure? Yeah. And so I had this idea of basically a whole new compositional style for the whole show that I did. But I said to the showrunner, here's what I want to do. Here's some examples of this composition. I think it's very different from the show you've done so far. So what I'll do is I will always give you a take that's safe. And that is just a normal over or like a normal master, so that if you think it's going too far in the edit, you can do whatever you want to. Or if you like it just a little bit to spice it up and don't want to go as full as I'm going, like, you have that option. So it's not just like I'm doing my thing. Like, I'm still very conscientious. They've already built something. Like, if I want to do something that different, really make sure one of those masters, one of those overs is like the style that they've been doing them in.
You're getting buy-in, which is great. So then there's never that moment of like, whoa, what are we looking at? And then that helps, that seems, I guess, to help your authority when you're on set, right? No one's popping up saying, wait, what is this? Which then can like have people pulling the threads and be like, oh, when she comes up to me, I don't know if it's a real note, or I don't know if it, you know, like there's all these, it's such the psychology of the job does not get enough, you know, devoted time. So I mentioned before we hopped on about talking about branding yourself as a director, because you've gone from doing plays at 10 to music videos to feature writer director to episodic television to guest directing and now producing director, correct? I don't know if that's something that we'll share in detail, but and so with every pivot, it's like I equate it to like graduating high school. You're the man, you're the woman, and then you go somewhere and you're a freshman, right? And so, like, how did you navigate that? How did you brand yourself? What was your approach to helping people redefine the way that they viewed you as a creative person?
This is my weak spot. I mean, I talked to a friend of mine lately. She does marketing, but like marketing for like T-Mobile, not film or, you know. And she was like, you got to stop. Your Instagram is like the cat and things you ate. And I'm like, that's all I like. It's the cat and things I ate. It's just like, you got to start showing more pictures of you on set. Like when we were in Canada, I think I might have posted in 60 days of shooting. one picture of me on set. Like it, and she was like, you got to start branding yourself and letting people, and I was like, people know I direct. And she was like, but again, like put yourself out there as really, but that's hard for me. So I think it has to be more conscious on my part, because I think in the past it was like the work speaks for itself, which I still believe, but I do see now the value in terms of doing the kind of work that you want, or a space that you don't yet inhabit, because people tend to hire you for a thing you've already done. But if it's a new kind of film or genre that you want to take on, it is good that people know you. And when you start to get busy and can't do as much meetings, it's good if there's a narrative out there about you where they feel like they know you and can just send you something.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not there yet. I'm working on it. And so I think a lot of it is relaying it to your team. Like, I want to be put out there for this. But I think when you're not great at branding, you have to do those generals and take them very seriously. You have to come into meetings. Generals I hate, and that's why I say you have to do them. I hate them, I hate them, I hate them. Because I am shy, and it feels a little like I'm a tap dancing monkey. But
right. With a water bottle in your hand.
Right. Specifics I love. And I do tell my agents, even if you think it's something I can't get yet, send me on that meeting, because that's where I shine. When I get to talk specifically about the material, then I will be remembered in the future. Right.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, what you're saying is so true. Like your brand is what you do, right? Because if you're putting something out there that's not true, it doesn't matter how much you brand yourself. People are gonna be like, "Yo, I met her, and nah, it ain't the business," you know. But it's getting out there. You've returned to so many places, and you've worked at so many places where, like, people can look at the fact that you work there, and it's almost like, the stamp and the endorsement.
But I will say, again, to the idea of it is the work at the end of the day, the branding will get you to a certain level. I'm not disputing that at all. It can definitely get you in the door. And if you're great at it, you should go whole hog.
Right.
But like, for example, moving into this producing director space, it was just the work. I didn't know Hello Sunshine or have a relationship with them before Little Fires. And then this project came up, and they were like, well, her first episode of Little Fires was basically a pilot. We know she can build something from the ground up. Let's meet with her and see what she has to say. And, we had a great meeting, and then I was given the job, but they specifically said, it's because we know we can trust you. Even though I hadn't done that job before, because they were so happy with the work from before. So it does tend to be, it always goes back to the work.
So it feels like we're having like a two-level conversation. There's the branding of just being consistent and clear and passionate and able to execute on all of those things. And then there is the other part of it that some people do truthfully or pompously to promote what they do and funnel it out to as many people as possible. I think that what you're doing in the meetings is the ultimate branding, like I think of, and for those who don't know, like the general meetings are like when you go around and you're like, all right, I'm going to meet the development people at Sony, and we'll see what happens. There's no agenda, except really, I guess what I kind of discovered is like what you're talking about. Like I try and make my own agenda, which is, all right, well, what did they have that I like? Okay, it'll be a general for a few minutes, and then I'm going to push it toward the thing that they have that I am interested in, so I can at least give them something valuable to take away from me, other than like, I grew up in New Jersey and I own a Super 8 camera, you know what I mean? So can you talk about the project specifically that you're producer directing or producing director?
I can talk about it in a loose way. I think they're coming out with an announcement in the next 2 weeks. I can say it's with Hello Sunshine. It is in 2 countries. It's in Los Angeles and it's in Italy. It is a breathtaking project. And I feel like it's one of my favorite things ever, ever, ever. Like,
wow.
Because I mean, even because there's some music videos that are on par for me with the experience with some of the episodic work or the feature work that I've done that I love. It's up there with that. It's because it really is almost like it deals with grief, and it's almost like an instructional manual of how you deal with grief, and how much beauty is a part of life, and living your life as as fully as you possibly can. But it's absolutely beautiful. Like the arc that it takes from 1 to 8 is stunning, and they did a beautiful job. But it's also like, in this time, I do want to feel like the work we're doing matters, and something that so beautifully shows I shouldn't even say it's about grief. It is about how you get through grief, and like how you wake up that next day, and then the day after that, and then like, man, you gotta wake up again, like, and do this again. And until there's that breakthrough to hope again.
Right.
And I just feel like after this year, I mean, everybody now knows somebody who has passed from this thing. Like it's still a couple more months of this. Like, and it's been hard.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm excited to shoot in Italy. I'm excited of how cinematic this can be. I'm super excited to producing direct, even though it's very hard. Like now I'm like, it takes its time. But I'm really excited to do it.
That's awesome. I want to actually ask you more about the difference, but the nuance of like how you get through grief being different than grief is something interesting, because I have a friend who was very intent on saying, I don't have cancer, I'm battling cancer.
That's right. That's
you know what
right.
I mean? And it's all these, and it's the director's job is really in those small little pivots of clarity, right? It's like, I can't stand when people say, the slaves. It's like, no, they were enslaved.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, and these words kind of trigger things. I was reading an article this morning, waking up scrolling, because that's the first thing I do, saying, I don't say, if something difficult comes up, don't say, how will I handle this? Say, how will Pete handle this? Or how will you do this? Because it changes the sense of weight.
That's good. Yes.
And it's tiny, right? So it's interesting, really finding those pivots and those pockets to exploit to win, because most people can see the surface level of something, but when you can really get underneath it and find the kind of the dichotomy of an emotion in one single moment, that's what makes shit dope.
Yeah. That was, I feel like, the best thing I've learned all week, though. Thank you for that. How will Nzingha handle this? Because then it's not you're holding it inside. There's already, by saying it that way, there's a slight disassociation from the problem. It's here and it'll be handled. This part of me will figure it out. But it's not like I'm consumed by it. I love that. Thank you.
Right.
Hi, I'm Ramla Mohammed, co-executive producer on Little Fires Everywhere, and you're listening to Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon.
Transitions, a director's journey and motivational handbook, is Pete Chatmon's upcoming book from Michael Weezy Productions. What started in 1993 has been a marathon of persistence and creative pivots, transitioning from indie filmmaker to teaching at NYU's acclaimed film school, to running a production company, to directing television and commercials, and ultimately eyeing a return to the feature films that gave him his start. A mixture of how-to, self-help, and inspiration, this book is for any person targeting a successful career in the creative arts. Transitions, A Director's Journey and Motivational Handbook is coming soon.
So I want to pivot back to when I shadowed you on, I guess that was 1320 of Grey's Anatomy. And so at this point, I'm just like a fish trying to soak up kind of like what we're talking about, all the little things, right? So this is more of like my scouting report on you. So I was like, all right, quietly confident, right? And this is cool because maybe it's like sometimes we don't know what we give off. We can be quivering inside while giving a direction that people like, oh, that was great. But quietly confident, like, and from that, I was analyzing the location scouts and then the tech scouts, because there's this one thing on a location scout when you've got, in the old days, maybe 4 or 5 people in the van, and then you do the tech scout, and there are 40 to 50 people listening for like a few words from you that can give them marching orders for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I appreciated the kind of that calm confidence and certainty. Because also I know, like, when you're moving through this as a Black person, as a woman, there's already going to be certain things that come with that, as far as whether or not people think you can even do this job. And I've seen that in how people do the job. And so then it just perpetuates what they've already thought. So there was that. Fashion on point, jumpers, African prints, pouches, and hats, all important things, right? Like, you have to have a signature look. And just an ease with all of the mechanics of production, knowing that there's only so much that you can change. In particular, I remember like a rehearsal that should have been maybe 3 minutes turning into an hour and 15, and just being able to try and provide solutions, but figure out the dance of who's the stakeholder here. So those were things that were great for me in watching, and then just kind of watching the shot list and the 2-camera breakdown, and letting me do the photos. And you probably just wanted to get out of there, but you let me shoot the photos for the LaTanya Richardson.
Oh no, I know what you're talking about. I thought you meant like on set photos. No, I thought it would be great. Shadowing, because I've done it. It's such a pill when you want to jump in, and I felt like this is at least an opportunity to jump in. Like, you've seen the world of the set, like you can do something. So no, it's funny even hearing you talk about location scouts, I know how I do them differently now. And it's partly, you actually hit the nail on the head, is as a Black woman, especially back then, you feel like I just have to be seen as competent. And so there's so much nerves about how you're presenting yourself. When now I've come to the point, I am more confident, but it's also like, they don't care how I'm presenting myself. Like, he wants to know, where are the trucks going to be parked? Like, where can I put a light? Like, where can I hide the gack? Like, and I wish, going back, that even when I was shadowing, I just asked questions like, what do they need out of the location scout? Because I would hear the director talk about like what the scene was and blah, blah, blah. And so that's just what I did. Like, I would be like, we're doing this. I'm going to have her walk through here. I'd love for this light to come on. But I didn't ever ask to know, what does the crew need out of this tech scout? Like, because I'm telling this grand vision I have, when they might just be wondering, like, how, where can I hide trucks? Like,
do I need a silk or no?
Yeah, exactly. Like, and so I started thinking in that way, and it helped all of us more. Like, that does include talking about lighting, because then they make sure the thing, or it does include, I plan on starting, with a jib, and we'll, carry them over here. I'd love to use steady. Like it just you need a jib? We gotta but just telling them like what coverage, that's not so important. Like,
right.
But there is something to when you're in that shadowing experience, a lesson that I learned is just ask, like, if you're going to this meeting, what does that props person need from you? And it's not just like them asking like, okay, a pencil, file folders, I got that. But like, if there's specifics, again, it's your movie. If you feel like, I want everything in this room to be blue, make sure you have blue file folders, blue notebooks, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I've never had that, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
Make sure you're giving them what they need and not just like wanting to look like you're competent in the job.
Right. Yeah, that's the tough part. And even still now, it's like tone meetings from show to show are so different that there's like, you have to just constantly be malleable to a degree, but be prepared with what your questions are and what your vision is. And so you'll soon be in those tone meetings with other directors. So what are you kind of, I don't know, if it's easily identifiable in like a quantifiable way, like what are like the top 3 things you are noticing are maybe different or more challenging in this producing director position than when you've been on the other side of it, showing up as a guest director?
The big difference in the beginning is, as a guest director, it's like you come into somebody's home and are going to cook for them. And like, you want to make the best meal. You want to ask them like, what are your favorite foods? What do you want to avoid? Like, that's kind of your job. And like, you do the best with the ingredients they have in their house.
Right.
Because you can't bring in another DP. Like you can't, it's what they have in their house you're cooking with. And just like, if they don't, my husband doesn't eat spicy foods. Well, we don't like handheld. Like, so
right.
When you're a producing director at the beginning, you are the architect of the house. And you are stocking the fridge, but you're also building the house. Like every head of department is somebody you have hired or approved. And so there's a lot of time where you're just watching reels and you're going through resumes, you're interviewing people, which is more the producer side of it, that you're not getting to spend that time doing script analysis or thinking about your shots, or there'll be time for that, hopefully. but there's a lot of work before you can even get to that phase of building the house and making sure you have the right team around you to hold that house up. And you're thinking in the right way so that when you're not directing the episode, it's a personality, like they can kind of work with anybody. Like it'll still keep going in a good direction if I'm not doing that episode. But you're also thinking about the other director's episodes. You got to read your scripts. You got to read their scripts, because if things come up like, oh, we don't have enough stage space or the budget, or those meetings you'll now be in, helping to creatively brainstorm how to make it work. So you're just thinking about a lot of things at once.
So does it like, are you around a table or in a Zoom meeting, everyone's, trying to figure out whatever aspect of the show logistically, and then certain topics come up and they're like, they look to you because it's like, well, what do we need for stages, or how many locations? Like you're constantly using your creative hat as a director to produce the overall show. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, they will send me things like, breakdowns and be like, which ones do you think which sets do you think we should build? Which ones do you think should be location? Which one can we do and cheat Italy for whatever? And which, and so I've never really had to do that in episodic. Like, what set should we build? Like, the sets are built. There might be like a swing set and they tell you going into it, we're going to build this one. But it's been like very interesting making those decisions and thinking about budget. And then other times saying like, I know this might cost us a little more.
Mhm.
I will work with you to find ways to trim the budget someplace else. But I do think you want to do this on location, or I do think you want to
Right.
do this in XYZ in a way that you do have more agency. But you do have to think about the budget, and you have to think about like that budget has to be, spread across 8 episodes. You can't hog it all like
Right.
in the pilot.
Right.
Like the show doesn't work, because the rest of the episodes weren't set up well.
Mhm.
That's your fault.
Right.
So,
Right.
you got to be responsible for those other things too.
And you are also, I assume, informing, script changes. I think that this might be tough to execute. I have a suggestion on how we keep the integrity of these moments, but maybe at another, is that
Yeah,
all
I
a
think
part
we
of it?
can collapse these scenes into this. I think maybe we can, instead of making this happen in 5 locations, let's see if we can make it happen in 2 locations. That is happening. Although I will say, the good thing is that quarantine gave us, because it was supposed to shoot last year,
Right.
is that all of the scripts are done and they're
Mm.
great. And they've been thought through and picked apart and revisited, so that there's not a lot of that I have to do.
That's
It
dope.
literally might be like, oh, can we, instead of doing 3 rooms like this, just make it one? Like it's more that
Right.
because they're tight scripts now, which is hard in
Dope.
episodic because they've got to always be writing and delivering so fast.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Right. Nah, that's great. It's like all of your talents are being pulled together to do this thing. And it's a story that you care about. So that's
Yeah.
that's the dream right there.
It is so creatively fulfilling. I will
Yeah.
say it's
Yeah.
something that I never thought I would do. I often I would see it being done and be like, I don't want to do that.
Right.
Just because it's like your work days are long as a director.
Right.
When you're now worrying about every department for every episode, and I'm definitely going to be very available to the directors and set them up with, here's the tone, here's how these people like to work, but really let them direct, and not
Mhm.
because you just can't do all that stuff at the same time. But I've seen it before and thought my brain isn't organized enough
Right.
to pull that off. But somehow on this one, I think because I love it so much, it's fun.
Right. In the maybe I can go 2 for 2 with another good quote in this episode. But I used to analyze a lot of business books and magazines, like in all the time I was raising money and trying to build my production company. And there was one thing that stood out to me. It was like, if you ever have to fire someone, it's actually your fault because you didn't hire correctly. And that stuck with me. Because when I went through times where I had man, that didn't work out, I was like, well, that person wasn't really ready to edit something like this. But I was just happy to have an editor. And yeah, of course it didn't work out. They were never going to be able to do it. And that was on me to be able to discern that and defend it, So
And
that's
literally just my heart stopped. I was like, did I just hire the wrong person in the department? And then I caught myself and I was like, no, I've worked with them twice before. They did a great job. It's fine.
Yeah, but that's awesome. I'll be calling you for advice because I have something that's supposed to, premium cable network wants to do with this pilot. Script has to be delivered to decide if it moves forward. But it's the first time where the writer was like, yeah, so think about actors you like and crew. I was like, oh shit, that's right. And all those relationships that you've built, you get to use. And
yeah.
Before the lightning round too, there was one thing, it's more a commentary, but I feel like the beauty of doing all the episodes that you've done and across so many different types of shows is you get this real understanding of how to do it. You know what I'm saying? I've done so many different types of comedies that I now have a much better understanding of the architecture of a joke. and so I can identify when what might be missing in it. If it's, in a tone that I'm versed in, but it's like, then when you take that and you go and do something where now you have a little bit more control, it's like you're off to the races because you've finessed everything. So that's dope. So here's the lightning round. If I've yet to really have a full slate of lightning-able responses. It might not be a lightning response, but I have 3 questions for you.
Okay.
So the first one is, if you had the keys to the castle and could change anything about the business or about being a director, what would it be?
That is a great question. This is a small thing. This is not that big of a more micro, but so much of our prep is so that other departments have their questions answered. And I feel like the work would be better and the work would be more fulfilling if there's just a couple of days carved into that schedule, really after the questions are answered, or maybe before, but it's carved into the schedule that's your work time on the script. That like you can do proper script analysis, you can not even outside of your shot listing, just you can properly live with the script. And let it sink into your subconscious, and then start shot listing and then answer questions. But it just feels like, we barely have enough time as it is. And if you added another day of prep or another couple days of prep, they would just take it up with more meetings. But I think it would, I heard that Wes Anderson likes to work that way, that he does everything in preps, but like always reserves 2 weeks to just think. And that is so good. Like, just think about the script and not be busying yourself and shot listing and prepping and answering this question. You're just thinking about it.
Right. Agreed. What 3 traits do you think someone needs to make it in this industry? Whatever, director, actor, cinematographer, executive,
A thick skin. And I say that because you just can't take things personally. Like, if you don't get a gig, who knows why? Like, it doesn't matter. It wasn't for you. If an actor had a fight with their wife this morning and comes in and screams at you, not even my business. I don't know, and I think in the beginning I was very like, I hope people like me. I hope the showrunner likes me. I started to adapt an attitude of, that's none of my business. That's manipulating to try to get them to like me. Just, it's none of my business. They get to feel however they want about me.
Right.
And then people love you. There's no pressure. It's just easy. I'm just here to do the best I can for your show. So I would say that ability to not take things personally, and vision, and not coming in. I have seen sometimes episodic directors, they work so often that it's like, I'm just doing what's scripted. I'm not thinking about what's not on the page that I can bring to this, or that I can do what's my vision for this episode. Right. It's just like, I just got to get this. I got to get this, what's on the page. I think the same thing with creative executives, that like having a strong vision, but being willing to adapt is important with DPs. Sometimes I'll have meetings and they'll say, I'm just here to serve your vision. At first that was fun. Now it's like, but what's your vision? Like, let's talk, and then we can find something. Maybe mine wins. Right. Probably will, because I love this idea. But like, I want you to have a strong sense of ownership too. And like, we're really all in this and have a vision for this.
Right.
3. I don't know what the third one. It's something to do with maximizing your physical health. And I don't know how to put that in a one word. I always take advantage of that hour of lunch to take a nap. I have heard directors be like, no, you got to eat with the crew and let them know you're one of them. They take naps too, like, and go their cars too. Like, I think it's so important to take care of your physical health in a job like this, where just you can run yourself down.
That's a point that a lot of folks don't consider. And your mind is on overdrive because you don't have those 2 weeks, right? The time that you would have to just ponder, and think more deeply about things, or the inspiration that comes from, walking down the block. Like, now that's happening all day long while you're shooting, and you need to kind of decompress in some fashion. And with COVID,
the very stress of this job can make you sick.
Yeah.
And can make you vulnerable to sickness. I mean, even now the COVID hours are shorter because they know your immune system is compromised when you're not getting enough rest.
Right.
Like, that's a huge thing to take care of. And like, I have really gotten it now. Like, you've got to, if nothing else, if you're like, where can I start? How can I tell the universe I'm ready? Start getting in shape, start getting your body ready for really long days. And which is, I hated. I think when you were shadowing me, like, you were talking about exercise and I was like, ew, get that conversation away from me. Because I hate it so much. And now I get it. Like, you have to get your body in a place where it can rest at night. You need those endorphins and to get rid of stress.
Water.
Like, you have to.
Yeah.
I'm forcing myself now.
The new thing too, with COVID is just like, I was joking yesterday, but it's all truth. I just find myself, because you're not eating on set, what happens is I go out, I slam a bottle of water, like the whole shit, you know what I mean? Like, in like a gulp. And then it's like, oh, okay, let me get that kale salad. Gone, because I got to get back on, and there's just no time to even do the minor things, and that must have a byproduct as well. You know what I mean? Everything has a byproduct. So these are great answers. Oh, third question. And I got this from the All the Smoke podcast that I'm a big fan of. Stephen Jackson always asks, who should be our next guest?
Have you talked to Nicole Rubio yet?
I have not. We just followed each other on Grey's Anatomy, and actually Million Little Things. We were back to back. So we did our like, yo, blah, 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 yo, but I have not had her on the show.
I'm such a fan.
Word.
I feel like somehow she always gets the hard episode. I'm so happy. Like, again, when I was going through the Shondaland rotation, she would come in like right before, right after me. But her episode would be like, cars underwater and they're struggling. I'd be like, yay, I get people are talking in the White House.
Right.
So, but she always handles these really tough situations flawlessly and just is so calm and cool and wonderful. Maybe even Lindsay Cohen, like the insight script supervisors have.
Yeah.
Like, in this hiring process and talking to directors, I always check with Lindsay and be like, have they worked on Grey's? And she'll be like, yes, they're not ready. Like, you know what I mean? Or yes, they were great. The actors love them, but like the script supervisor sees everything, and they're hearing it from the writers and the producers and the directors and the actors. I think they are a great resource as well.
Dope. Well, those are two viable, dope guests that I can reach out to. So I appreciate that. I just want to thank you again, Nzingha, for joining the pod and sharing your story and journey and thoughts and all that good stuff. And definitely look forward to one day.
This was so good. Thank you so much.
What's up, people? This is Pete Chatmon. Follow me on Instagram and on Twitter via @Pete Chatmon. Follow the pod on Facebook on our Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon official page, and hit up our mailbag with questions, suggestions, or hey, donations if you're feeling like it via letsshootwithpetechapman@gmail.com. And just in case you need to know how to spell it, that's Pete with the last name Chatmon. All right, that was episode 23 with Nzingha Stewart. I hope y'all enjoyed that conversation. If you have any questions, like the promo said, hit us up on email, letsshootwithpetechapman@gmail.com, or hop on those socials at Pete Chatmon, at Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon, and hit us with questions. We're going to get into that mailbag more and more and more. And I hope you'll tune in next week for episode 24. The guest is, I don't know, but it will be here Wednesday. And, maybe if we get some flooding in of questions, I'll make it a Q&A show. But tune in next week, y'all. In the meantime, stay safe, spread love, and keep creating.